Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this very special conversation club. My name is Federico Arteaga. I'm academic director at Lexicom, and I'm a member of Código Medellín. Código Medellín is a consulting board for plurilingualism in the city of Medellín. And we work hand in hand with Secretaría de Educación, with the program Semilla Bilingüe. We're here also thanks to Universidad de Antioquia, part of Código Medellín, Ruta N, also part of Código Medellín. And what we're going to be doing today, it's a very interesting exercise in which we will use this chat with these people to learn a little bit about the vocabulary, the expressions, how we use English teaching and English learning as a way to understand and express the reality of what is going on in our country. As this is a pedagogical exercise, there are a bunch of guests today, and we're going to start with a short round of introduction. Whatever you want to tell us about yourself, who you are, why you're here, what you do, please tell us everything we need to know to get to know you a little better. So I'm just going to throw it to Miguel. Let's start with you.
Thank you so much, Federico. I will present myself. My name is Miguel Cabanzo. That is the short version of my entire name, because my complete name is Miguel Landi. I work as a researcher or specialist for an initiative that is in charge of the following up of the political, following up of the peace agreement of the Cork Institute and Secretaría Nacional de Pastoral Social. This initiative has the mandate to monitor the implementation of the complete peace agreement. And I'm in charge specifically of following up the political participation chapter. This chapter is about all the opening of the democracy, the change that needs to be done to have a better democracy. So thank you so much for the invitation, and I hope we have a special conversation here with all the panelists.
Thank you very much, Miguel. Let's go with Norma, please.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Norma Realizea, and I am from Boston, Massachusetts, but currently I'm in Michigan on this call. I'm visiting my best friend. Half of my heart, though, is in Colombia. My dad is Paisa, and I've been keeping up with events over in Colombia, and I was very happy to be there last year to see my family. So I run a nonprofit in Boston that works on education called Next Gen Talent, and I'm just very happy to be here. I'm happy to be part of the conversation.
Thank you very much, Norma. Lily Beatty, let's go with you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lily Beatty Manrique, known by my students as Teacher Lily. I'm co-founder and director of a K-5 school in the neighborhood of Siloé in Cali, Colombia. And I'm very thrilled to be here and to speak as an educator and as a social entrepreneur. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nicole?
Hello, well, my name is Nicole. I'm from Medellín. You know, we're all here talking about with the mayor of Medellín. I'm from the School of Languages of the University of Antioquia, which is the students that we're here right now. I don't know what else to tell you. I'm 18 years old. I've been studying in the university since I was 15. I've tried to manage the whole medical volunteering situation that's happening right now within the protests. So that's what I'm going to focus my speech more, because that's my area of like interest and knowledge. And I also wanted to give you all like a perspective of how a student within that medical volunteer is like working and all that stuff. So yeah, that would be my presentation. And I hope this conversation turns out to be great.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Let's go with Jamie.
Yes. Hi, my name is Jamie and I'm from the Netherlands, and currently I'm living in Medellín. I came here for the first time 2 years ago and I really fell in love with the city. And since then, I'm traveling back and forth to the Netherlands. And since a month ago, I'm studying here in Medellín Spanish. So English is not my foreign language as well, that is Dutch. But if I'm going to speak in Dutch, then it will be horrible for everyone. And in the Netherlands, I have my own marketing company. I work as a freelancer in marketing, but now I'm studying Spanish here.
Okay, well, welcome. That's excellent. Let's go with Manuela. No, Manuela, sorry, Manuela is part of the team. Karen, yes, sorry.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karen. I'm 22 years old. I'm also a student from the University of Antioquia. I'm from a small town in the eastern plains of Colombia. It's a town that has been like roughly punished by all the violence and everything. So I will be talking about that a little bit, you know, try to merge that conversation as well here. So yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Sorry, what's the name of the town?
It's Tame Arauca.
Okay, thank you. Let's go with Julian.
Good afternoon, you all. Thank you for the invitation, for having us here. My name is Julian Andres. I'm also a student of the School of Languages, studying right now foreign language teaching. And I'm also part of the Museo Casa de la Memoria. I'm working there as a bilingual mediator during these times. I'm 22 years old. I'm also from a small town called Ciudad Bolívar, the southwest part of our department. And thank you so much for having us here.
Thank you for attending. And we're on the side of the board of Código Medellín, we have Paula Echeverri.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. For those of you who are watching us now, I'm Paula Echeverri. I'm part of Mesa, código Medellín, and I currently am the director of the School of Languages. Thank you all again.
Okay, thank you, Paula. And Alejandro?
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to see all their faces and this opportunity to share ideas and analysis. I've been working during the last 8 years with Diana Corporation. This is a center of business and innovation in Medellin, and I've been focused in innovation for education. And this place is full of lovely people, family, and friends. So I would love to have a relaxed and informal, and obviously a deep conversation with you.
Thank you, Alejandro. And Wilder?
Hello, everyone. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and we are profoundly grateful for all the people who made it to be here and to join us in this important and relevant conversation. We think that these kind of scenarios are useful not only for citizens of Medellin, but citizens of the country, who which this scenario could, or this event could help, you know, show what we think about things, but try to understand one another. So it's important to listen what other people have to say, and that's why we think that it's so important that you all are here, and we're so grateful for that. Thank you, Federico.
Thank you so much, Wilder. Well, as teachers, we know that listening is 50% of speaking, right? You cannot grade speaking if you don't grade listening simultaneously. And to everybody who's watching us, mostly students and learners of English, let's remember that when we're having a conversation, it's important not to focus too much on the form, but on the message. As long as the mistake doesn't interrupt conversation, it's never a problem. So that's always very encouraging to engage in conversation. And we have gathered some questions from especially two of our guests, from Miguel and Norma, and they've sent them. And we were going to discuss some of them. But of course, the conversation will flow naturally, right? The conversation will go where it has to go. Always keeping in mind that this is pedagogical exercise and the idea is for language practice in everything that it implies. Okay, so one of the questions that was sent is, I think, a very contextualizing question in which students can help us more than anything. And the question is, which are the root causes of the current situation, 3 weeks of a national strike and social burst? What are the causes of this thing? How can we communicate it to people outside? Who wants to participate? I would like one of the students to help us with that.
Sure, why not?
Go.
Okay, so I'll say like what our perspective is as students, but if my other students can like join in and help me with a little bits, and that would be perfect. Now, if we think about the Colombian situation at the moment, we go back ages ago, because it didn't start 20 days ago. It didn't start on the 28th. It certainly didn't. The corruption in the country is something that has been going on for longer than I've ever lived or will live. And it's important to acknowledge that, you know? But if we focus this discussion on the problematic that is going on right now in the city and in the country, then we need to focus on several things that the government decided to do whilst we're in a pandemic that we all know about. And while the current economic situation of Colombia is worrying. So we first need to talk about the monetary, or like, I don't know how to really say this in English, the reform that they wanted to do. If you know the exact term, this would be a perfect moment to intervene.
Tax reform.
Okay, so the economic reform that they wanted to do, obviously that hit very hard, because with this whole pandemic, families and mainly the middle class struggled a lot. The unemployment went up, and everything just went crazy, economically speaking, within the country. So making a reform like that in the middle of this crisis that is not only sanitary, but also economic, as I already said, it's very bold, to say the least. Now, on top of that, again, pandemic, and they also wanted to make a health reform, which is also very problematic for the context that we're in right now. Those two things at the same time in this particular moment just made everything explode. I'm not saying those are the root causes. I'm just saying that's what just made everything burst and why we're here right now. Now, within the whole strike and the protests, some other inconvenience, some other situations have been presenting, and that is always being added up to the conflict that we're having at the moment. So basically, for the people watching us that don't really live in this context that we're in right now, it's a whole bunch of things just mixed together that made the Colombian people just scream that they needed.
Break out.
Yeah, just like we opened our eyes and we just said, like, you know, we're not taking this anymore, and we really need a change, a political change. So that's basically my approach on things. I know that this is not the root cause. When I read the question, I was like, this is a very hard question, but I understand that in this moment those could be some of the causes. If anyone else has anything to add, perfect.
Thank you very much. Julian has his hand raised, so let's go with you, Julian. And then if Jamie wants to participate, I think. I don't know. Okay, let's go with Julian.
Okay, thank you so much. I completely agree with Nicole. I was actually thinking about this question and trying to answer to myself, trying to recognize all those root causes that have exploded during these times. And for me, I actually agree with Nicole, but I'm going to add some other reasons I figured out when I was trying to answer this question. And one of them was that, for example, right now, we cannot try to understand this complex situation without knowing or remembering that we had another demonstration time before or during 2019, before the pandemic, and that it was abruptly stopped because of this situation. And so I guess that is just like a reborn, because the whole problematic was not solved during this time. So I guess that it was necessary to reborn again. And I'm going to say that there are some, just like doing this metaphor about the iceberg, this is just the top of the iceberg, the economic reform, that there are some other causes that are under the sea level that we couldn't see like explicitly, but that they are just like emerging. And one of those are the inequality. There are several communities all around our country that have been impoverished historically, and those who couldn't obtain, for example, access to several opportunities like education, health, and some others, they're starting to in that collective awakening of what they deserve, of what we deserve. So that's one of the reasons why. And also another is the state oblivion, because sadly, our state has just arrived to some territories just because of war, or when they're running for Congress or for presidents, for example. So this state of oblivion has obliged many people to live in those impoverished situations throughout time, and now they start demanding that, asking for those rights they deserve, and also acknowledging that there is this lack of presence in the territories. And another one to end my intervention is the loss of credibility of the institutions right now in our country, talking about the Congress, talking about the SMAT, talking about the public force, talking about the Defensoría and Personería, because many people consider that they don't feel represented by these institutions. And it is also one of the reasons why people are right now on the streets. People are still on the demonstrations, and which is really nice for me is that this movement has been growing a lot.
Okay, thank you very much, Julian. A few things, because remember that this is a pedagogical space and I can't stop being a teacher. The collocation that we're using is tax reform, right? It's not an economic reform, it's a tax reform, right? And also, we don't talk about the top of the iceberg, we talk about the tip of the iceberg, right? It's just the tip of the iceberg. So there's that. And also remember that when we're talking about Defensoría del Pueblo, we talk about the ombudsman, right? We're using the term ombudsman. Okay, thank you very much, Julian. Anybody else wants to participate, answering this question about the root causes? Who is gonna go?
Not exactly the causes, but my family is living in the Netherlands. And I noticed, because I'm telling more or less the same story as Nicole does, but I notice when I tell them, because they only read things on the news in the Netherlands, it's hard for them to understand that this complex situation, because, when they are reading the news, they only read about the demonstrations and what is happening and the violence, etc. So it took me a lot of time to explain them the situation, and that it's more than only the demonstrations, what is happening now. So that was the thing that I wanted to add in this discussion.
Okay.
I would love to add something with what she just said. Like, she's talking about a family that lives very, very far away. If we talk about Colombian families, even living the current situation in the cities that we have these issues, in the towns that we have the issues, there's still families that it's so hard to get them to understand the actual political context and how that can affect them. So it's very interesting to me to see that a family in another country that is so far away from here actually relates to that same feeling of not actually getting the whole picture. And I think that spaces like this one can really get the information across, like can really tell the people what's actually going on. And if we can create more spaces like this, not only in English, but I would love to participate, if I knew more languages, I would love to participate in other spaces so we can share with the rest of the world. I honestly believe that this would get to so many families that are trying to understand the national context that is going on at the moment. Like, perfect.
Well, remember that this is being recorded, and so the YouTube link is going to be live there for you to. Hey, mom, I don't have the time to explain it to you, but here's a 2-hour video of people talking about it. Right? That's going to work wonders. Miguel, go for it. You raise your hand.
Yeah, I raise my hand because I would like to add something that Julian said, and it's about the inequalities. And inequalities is like that one of the main root causes of this current situation. But it's not only about economical inequality, it's also about political inequalities. No, so we need to like make a difference between territories, between different actors that are involved in this current situation. And in this inequality, we should also talk about the exclusion, about the racial exclusion, about the gender exclusion, because all these phenomena are related to this situation. We shouldn't be talking about only about the like the consequence of the national strike, or no, we should be talking about how the poverty has continued through the last 10, 20 years, and this last year has increased due to the pandemic. But the poverty is a phenomenon, it's a historical phenomenon. And we also should talk about how there is the current situation of a specific population, specifically the youth population. And the youth population are, because of the pandemic, but also because of the different decisions that the different governments has taken in the last 5, 10, 20 years, we need to have a historical perspective to understand the current situation. So all these phenomena are implicated, are related, and are taking us to the situation where the young people are going to the streets day after day. So yeah, that's.
Thank you, Miguel.
Like
and now that you mentioned, now that we were getting into the territories, another of the questions has to do not only with the territories, but with the actors that you were mentioning. Who are involved in this? What are the parties that are interacting here? So who can illuminate this for people who are outside the country, or maybe for your bilingual families? What are the actors? Who are the people involved in this process? Let's say over the last 3 weeks, over the last month, 3 weeks. Yes.
Okay, I'll start again, and then y'all can start joining in.
Sure.
So I was thinking about this question before coming in, and still was just as hard to think as the last one. Because if you think about it, there's so many people that have joined from their own places, from their own points of view. So you have the students, you have the teachers, you have the universities as a whole, you have the indigenous people, you have police, you have government, you have medical volunteers, you have lawyers that are also volunteering. You have so many people that are putting their, how do I say this? Like, what they know, their knowledge, their careers, you know, what they've studied, what they know, they're putting it as a volunteer tool for other people to use. Just as I was saying with the lawyers, you know, a lawyer can get a lot of money for what they're doing right now for free. It's just like, see how the heart of everyone in Colombia has joined to for one purpose, just to cooperate in what's going on and just let the government see what's happening. So honestly, putting it in a little list of like 5 actors, 10 actors, that would be so difficult, because everyone is involved in their own way. Even the families that don't even know what's going on, they are also involved. Everyone is involved in the situation because it's just a nationwide issue that's going on at the moment. Then
Yes.
I will let the other people like explain other areas, but I would like to take just a few minutes to explain about the medical volunteers that have been going at the moment. I think it's such an important topic to talk about. This is, for me, it's so empowering to see how doctors, nurses, first aid practitioners, I would call them.
Yes. First responders. You call them first responders.
Thank you. First responders are going to the streets, not knowing if they're coming back even, and just putting their whole passion and their knowledge to a volunteer action. That to me is so incredibly amazing. I've been working hand in hand with them here in the city. We have this whole community of different groups of medics and just staff, medical staff, that have been working together just to save lives. And it's so amazing because Medellín, for the people outside of it, or like the metropolitan area, it has a weird position, like geographically speaking, it's weird. So it's not very easy to get access if you're from one side of the city to the other side. It's not very easy, but still they have managed to cover the whole area, and it's just amazing. It's so incredible to see how our medical volunteers have been putting their money, their time, their experience, their knowledge to this cause. It's just amazing. So I just wanted to let everyone know that people that could get paid for everything that they're doing it are doing it for free, and because they love the country. That's just empowering to me. So that would be
How did you become involved with this medical service that you're doing?
Right, so weird because I study translation. So what does translation have to do with medicine? You know,
it does.
So, well, I at the moment I work as a medical interpreter. So I started learning about medicine with that situation. But then I'm also a scout, an explorer. I don't know how to call it. A scout.
Scout.
Perfect. And that has just given me the whole serve the people vibe, like the heart to just serve others. So I learned about these medical volunteers that were working in the city. And I thought, why not help them with what I know, with what I can do, because I don't know anything about first response, nothing about that. So I cannot be in the field covering for people. But what I can do is use my knowledge of working with teams as a scout and just figuring out strategies to cover better the city, to move the teams or the units in a certain way. So all that management was what I thought I could put to use. So that's what I did.
That's absolutely exactly, because you say what you can do, whatever you can do, you're putting it to the service of one thing that is very special. Lily, please, teacher Lily, go for it.
I do agree with Nicole. It's a very complex question. I believe that if this was a movie, definitely the main characters would be like the young people, the unions, you know, but mainly like young people are taking a leading role in this movie right now. And so like in the beginning, the national strike was led by unions, students, even teachers, but mainly students. But then I feel like the whole strike took a little, what do you call it? I don't know. Yes, because then it came like, then the main actors were also the neighborhoods. And it's in the neighborhoods where the road blockades are taking place, where young people and mothers and like regular people are just taking a leading role in the whole conversation. So yes, like we are all involved, whether we like it or not, whether we agree or disagree. It's a whole Colombia thing. I believe that this is the beginning of a new era, and we are all involved. So yay for the youth, and I must admit that I would like to live in a country where the military forces are not the antagonists in the story. Like I wish we could all work together towards a goal that is shared as a country. Unfortunately, they are seen today as the bad people. And I tell my students, there is bad people everywhere, even, you know, like in the neighborhoods, in the police, in the politicians. Like there is always bad people and good people, but this is not something, like that's not the point. Like pointing at who's evil and who's good, but finding results out of the whole thing that is happening. So yeah, that's it. And And the communities, I believe today, play one of the main roles in this story. Communities, neighborhoods, mothers.
Somebody
Yes,
in the chat was asking very broadly what's happening in Cali, right? But I think that's a very big question. Just like asking who are the actors in this, it's also an infinite question, right? But Lily, now that you are speaking and you are a teacher working in Siloé, right? And we've all seen the news, right? And you're talking about the communities. So how has your interaction been with students, communities around you? How has that worked out for you in this time?
Excuse me, the interaction with students?
With the communities around the school that you have started in Siloé.
Well, in a neighborhood like Siloé, I believe the situation gets more tough or gets tougher because well, if you see, like 2 days ago, I attended a class, like an open air class, in at the round point where the blockades are taking place, and the teacher showed a map with the most violent neighborhoods in Cali, and that's precisely where the blockades or the puntos de resistencia are taking place. So you can see that it is this population that is in pain, that is angry, that is they have had enough, and they say, okay, this is enough. We need a change. We need to be heard, and if this is the only way to be heard, we're gonna do it. So in a place like Siloé, where yes, we all know that there are gangs, there are like bad things happen in neighborhoods like this. So right now that has increased because the police is not there. Like we kicked out the police, and now the gangs are doing their thing because the police is not there. So it's very controversial. But I would say like half the population of Siloé is with the guys who are on the front line facing the police abuse, and then half the population says it's not okay. We have to close our businesses. They robbed us, like they vandalized many, and we don't know who does it, right? Because it's not the guys who are doing the protest. That's when we talk about the actors, like who is involved in this, who comes and vandalizes and does all these evil things, and then all the media focus on those little things. I mean, they're not little things, but they focus on those aspects of the strike, when the main point is like all the points we were talking about earlier. Yeah. So I don't know if that's like a sabotage of the strike, because we want to firmly believe that our young people have a cause and that they need support. It's very difficult with the abuse by the military forces, because my children haven't been able to sleep peacefully. Like there are bullets at their windows, the tear gas. I mean, it's really shocking when a family is at home and then the tear gas comes through a window or to a balcony. Like my students are scared, like they don't leave their homes. The families are locked down, like even more than last year in the pandemic lockdown. Today, the families are afraid to leave their homes because they know that anytime there is going to be a shooting, there is going to be a tear gas. So it's like a state of fear that we are living right now in the communities. Yes.
Thank you, Lilibet. Okay, thank you very much. We're going with Julian and with Jamie.
I only wanted to react on. Is it okay? Because this is exactly the story that my family hears in the Netherlands. So for me, it's really hard to explain the whole situation because they only hear the violence and the demonstrations, etc. But for me, it's because I hear from all the demonstration and also what's happening there. It's really hard for me to understand as a foreigner. I see that there needs a lot of changes, but what is needed to get this whole situation under control again? And that, you know, you cannot change the whole country immediately. Probably will take many years. So, you know, I'm really curious what is needed to change it a little bit in a more positive way.
Okay, we're gonna go to that. We're gonna answer that question as soon as Julian participates. He's been raising his hand for some time.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to add something, and it is that what's happening on the streets right now is really beautiful, because this is not what we want to say is that this doesn't belong to any political party, and this is something that is beyond the political parties. Even though some politicians have gone abroad to say that some socialist, communists, people, and those who belong to these left-wing parties are the ones who are on the streets. And I guess that this is a really poor point of view, and this is a really bad reading of what is happening right now in Colombia. And also that is not what it used to be on the past or in the past. That is that these demonstrations only took place took place in some big main cities like Bogota, Medellín, and Cali. But right now this is happening all around our country. And even in small towns, some people are on their own demonstrations and even supporting these struggles, which is really beautiful. And this is something intergenerational. This is not only about the youngsters. This is not only about the students and not even about the unions. It's about the general population of Colombia being tired of what is happening and what has historically affected them throughout time. And this is something that is going beyond, which is really beautiful. So we want to say to all those who are abroad and to all of them to those who are trying to stigmatize demonstrations, to stigmatize those who are on the streets right now, saying that this belongs to the communist or the socialist wing or the socialist parties, that this is about the people. This is about the Colombian citizenship. This is about those who don't feel fully represented on this government right now, who consider that they are still violating those rights, those who are on the streets right now. This is not about political parties. This is what I want to say.
Thank you very much, Julian. Okay, so the question that Jamie posed had to do with what can we do to make change in a positive way, right? How can we get this thing under control, the positive way, the calmer way, whatever, right? And being such a difficult question, but exactly because of that reason, because it would be very ideological to go into the whole discussion, how about some practical ideas? And I think that a person that can help us with that right now is Norma, because Norma works a lot with talent development, with helping people exploit their own skills. And then I would like also, if possible, that Lily talks a little bit about her as a social entrepreneur, right? Regarding the question that Jamie made, what can be done to make positive changes. So Norma, if you would like to help us with this.
Sure. So, I mean, I think from my perspective, you know, it's really interesting to talk about this stuff for me, because as you've all seen, I'm sure in the world has seen, the United States, where I am currently, has been going through its own sort of big protests and social movements and things like that around issues of race and gender and all kinds of things. We also have growing inequality in our country, and that's been a big topic. I mean, I think for one, you know, it's really important to think about the idea of, you know, how do you create more political leadership among young people? And I know there's a question in this, but I know that here, for example, you know, I know there's a lot of polarization between the left and the right, and the same thing is happening here in the United States. But I think talking about how you train young people to become activists and give them the resources to really enter sort of a new frontier in politics in Colombia is important. Here, for example, we have, graduate schools that like the Kennedy School at Harvard, which really kind of pushes out a lot of political folks. But how do you start to encourage younger people to get involved? Because I think it's great to be a community activist, but then how do you actually get them into the circles of power that put them in office? That's really important. Whether it's starting to talk about that in high school and middle school, kind of sort of how do you engender that leadership early on? And I also think, there needs to be a lot of discussion around training young people. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion in the protests around getting more people into university and the cost of that in Colombia. That's a big problem here in the United States too. We have more student loan debt than credit card debt at this point in the United States, and that's become a big issue here. But how do you get folks trained for good jobs that pay family sustaining wages? There are way too many people in Colombia that are working really hard jobs and way over 60 hours a week, and they still can't afford to, feed their families and get them into, into some sort of success in life. So I think talking about like, what are the trainings that exist? How do you create more in line with what the economy needs and what employers are looking for in the ever-changing world? I mean, that question is so broad, it's really hard for me to answer, but I think that there are there's so many aspects of this. There's sort of workforce development. But it all has to start with the young people, because really, as you all said, this is really a protest that kind of started with the young people and the urban people. And how do you meet their needs, right? But also pay attention to how all of these issues disproportionately affect certain segments of society, like the Afro-Colombians, like the indigenous Colombians, like women, because I think, to be honest, race is a very touchy subject everywhere. But I think in Colombia, my experience has been that a lot of people say, we don't have racism here, and that kind of denial is not helping. It's pretty clear in statistics that it exists. And, we can talk about that later. But I think those are the root causes, inequality of whom, of what, and all of those sort of strata of society are involved in answering that question.
Okay, thank you very much, Norma. And yes, there has been always the view that in Colombia we are too poor to be racists. And so, yeah, right. It's funny in its own right, in its own dark, twisted right. But that idea has always been hovering in the back of many people's heads, even with good intentions, probably even with the best intentions at heart. But it just doesn't work like that. Thank you. Lily, so you want to participate on this from the point of view of a social entrepreneur?
It's so difficult. I would say education, but I don't want to be, just too hippie to think that just through education, we're going to solve the problems in the world. I do believe that there is a problem at the heart of Colombians. I don't know, and I don't know how to put it into words, but yes, we have racism. There is tension among social classes. There is hate in Colombians' hearts, and I believe that as long as there is hate, and as long as we blame it on others, or expect governments to solve the problems, we're not going to be able to go anywhere. And that's where social entrepreneurship comes into action, because rebellion without a project is not successful. We need a project. We need to be rebels at heart, but we also need to be so smart to have a project that starts changing the system little by little. So in my case, I founded a bilingual school in a Estrato 1 neighborhood. So that's rebellious, That's what if in 10 years I have a student of mine who goes to Harvard, or who starts his own, his own business in Siloé to bring tourism to the neighborhood? What if one of them becomes a famous journalist? So I do believe, as a social entrepreneur, we are in the middle of the private and the state. We know that the state in Latin America won't ever solve all the problems we have. And the private sector is too busy caring for their own good. Although some of the private sectors are already thinking of the environment and social causes. But that's where we come in as social entrepreneurs to say, yes, too bad. Money rules the world. And yes, we need to make money, we need to work and so on. But we need to make, this is the cake. I'm not gonna eat the whole cake. We're gonna share the cake in equal parts for everyone. So we need to make the cake bigger and give everyone the same portions of the cake. And that's what we can do through social entrepreneurship. I'm not gonna say we're gonna solve the problems, because I don't believe we can solve problems. We can minimize them, and we can make the world a less unequal world. Like that's the whole point, to give people the opportunities. If one person wants to become a doctor, let them become a doctor. Give them a public university that they can attend and become a doctor. And if they want to be slackers and don't do anything, okay, but they had the opportunities, they had the chances. So we need a world when we need a Colombia with more chances. We need to lower that percentage of 42% people in Colombia living in poverty. It's insane. Like, it's insane. And that if we're going to talk about the root causes of this social burst, is those 42% of people who live in poverty, and they say this is enough.
Thank you very much, Lily. You are absolutely real. We should be all rebels at heart who know how to use Excel. That is always going to help. Okay, before I give the word to Alejandro and Mijan, and I don't know if Jamie is still raising her hand, or because her hand's still raised.
Oh no.
Norma wants to complement something that Lily said very quickly, and then we're going with Alejandro and Mijan.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I think, in keeping with what Julian said earlier around the credibility of institutions, I can give you an example of one thing that I'm trying to do with my organization here in Boston, which is to sort of hold the institutions accountable to what their outcome should be, which is making students, so institutions like colleges and technical training and things like that, more accountable to the students that are in their programs. I've created an online directory where I've done research on all kinds of different post-secondary programs. So when we say post-secondary in English, we mean any training after high school that will lead you to a job. So it could be college, it could be an apprenticeship to become a carpenter, it could be a program at a community college, which is a 2-year college here versus a 4-year. And what I've done is I've interviewed all of these career-focused programs in everything from things like nursing or mechanical engineering or facilities maintenance tech. Those are folks that work on sort of managing buildings and the facilities, the construction and things like that in buildings, where I've interviewed them and asked them things like, what's your graduation rate of your program? What's your job placement rate? What are the starting wages of students? Where you're really getting at evaluating what is the actual sort of success of the program. Because when it comes to the only people who can afford not to worry about money when it comes to what path they pick for a career, it's people who already have money. So, a lot of people here, for example, we have counselors in high schools who will say things like, the most important thing a student should look at is whether they'll love the job. Is it their passion? And my whole thing is that is important. You want the student to like the job that they're trying to train for, but they also need to know that they can live off of it, right? Especially in a place as expensive as the United States. So I'm trying to get the kind of information for counselors that work with the students and the students to make a choice about, an informed choice about whether this is a good return on investment for their education, because education here is so expensive. And so I think that there's a lot of information that can be gathered to make sure that we're steering low-income students into places that will actually lead them to good family sustaining wages and jobs that will maintain them over time. I think it's important for us to start thinking about how our institutions can do a better job of giving them that information so they can make better choices.
Thank you very much, Norma. And it's great what you're doing. It's basically a kind of ethical entrepreneurial activism.
That's
because
right.
You're working from the inside in order to protect, for example, recent graduates. Recent graduates are usually they're bottom feeding for choosing, because they usually have no experience, right? They're like bottom choosers because they have no experience. And when they are chosen for the first time, usually salary and wages are there's a big disparity. So it's great that you have done that. Okay, let's go with Alejandro and then Miguel.
Oh, thank you, Federico. I just want to add something to Lily comment about the Colombian heart. Colombian's heart. I feel like it's not just hate, but fear. I feel like it's more fear than hate. Yeah, obviously we have a lot of situations that we hate a lot, but fear. But also, I think we are so inquisitive, and we have a lot of initiatives. And actually, you, Lily, you show us a lot of clues to create our own revolutions. Education is a revolution, and I don't know you what you think, but I don't feel hippie when I say education is the right path. I feel I'm a believer. No, I'm a real believer, because it's not the current education, is the education in the big frame of education, talent, connection with the industry, connection with new roles, new skills. The new world is outside. So one of most important things about this conversation is we need a new vision. We need connections. We need to feel that we are part of a bigger ecosystem. It's not just this endogamic, I don't know if it's the word, but endogamic situation. It's not, it's not our head in the air. No, we need to see the horizons. And we have a lot of friends. Jimmy's here from Netherlands, for example. We have a lot of friends, and we need to understand that we are connected. And that's my point of view. So it's just to add, not just hate, but fear, and we need to change the fear to faith and to hope. I feel.
Thank you very much, Alejandro. You're absolutely right. There are many things inside Colombia's heart at this moment. Just some are burning brighter than others, and making fires. Let's go with Miguel.
Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking and continue with the idea of Alejandro about the ecosystemic, thinking with an ecosystemic perspective. I believe that collective problems need collective solutions and strategic solutions. And one tool that has a country, the entire country, is the peace agreement. And I talk about this tool as a tool because it has a lot of commitments that would help to reduce the political exclusion, the economic exclusion, and all the topics we have been talking about. And thinking specifically in the political participation chapter of the peace agreement, this chapter has a specific commitments to strengthen the youth organizations and to strengthen the democratic culture of the youth and different populations. So when we think about actions that should be done, we should think also about the implementation of this chapter that would help to reduce the stigmatization, contribute to the reconciliations that all the country needs. So yeah, in the peace agreement, we have a route. We have already a route to continue and to help to reduce all the problems we have been talking about in this conversation.
Thank you so much, Miguel. I agree. It's a roadmap. And before I go to Jamie, when you talk about the peace agreement, and since a lot of us here are English teachers or preparing to become English teachers, right? I think about that document, and I think a lot about the Common European Framework. The Common European Framework, we understand it like, oh, it's level A1, A2, B1, B2. But the Common European Framework is a text of around 360 pages that is updated every year. And most of its content is diplomatic, right? And even at the beginning, when they start describing the Common European Framework of Reference for the Teaching of Languages, they mention that language learning should never be a tool of colonization, that language learning should only be a tool for empowering local communities. Even the Common European Framework says it. So sometimes we ask ourselves, how can I make my teaching a little bit more relevant or a little bit more thing. I think that if we read this document a little bit more closely than just can-do statements, and I know that all teachers that I know have read the entire thing, right? It's still a good point of reference, just like you talk about the peace agreement for this, for political participation, for activist teaching. I think the Common European Framework gives ideas. Jenny, please go ahead.
Yes, I need to leave this conversation, unfortunately, due to another meeting. But I want to thank everyone for a really interesting, good conversation. And I hope next time I can join the whole conversation.
Okay. Thank you very much for attending, Jamie. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your input.
Bye-bye.
And now we have been talking a great deal from an urban point of view. And I remember that when Kari said that she's from Cauca, she said, I'm bringing that type of view onto the table. And I think that there's a lot to learn, because one of the things that has brought these demonstrations into worldview is that it's happening in the cities, not happening in the small towns where this is a little bit more common and at the same time unseen. So I would like to ask Karen to share with us her point of view from exactly from that perspective that she has chosen.
Sure. Well, first of all, is Tame Arauca, no Cauca, Arauca. But yes, like when all this started back in April 28th, I didn't like really know what was going on like back there in my hometown and, you know, my department, because I'm living here in Medellín, right? So I was like asking all my friends like, hey, it's something going on there, because this is like something important and people like need to talk, you know. It's not just a thing that has to happen in the big cities. There's also, you know, we need people to also speak out in like the different regions. And some of them were like, oh, I don't know what's going on. But then I started like looking at the social media, and I started people started sharing pictures and videos, and like I was literally in tears, because as I said at the beginning, the violence there for like, you know, all these guerrillas and all that, it's heavy, and people is scared of, you know, like going out and express their ideas against something that they think is not right. So seeing all the people like getting together in all these like dangerous places, to put it like that, was really like joyful for me. And I was like, oh, I wish I was there, you know, supporting them and doing more than, you know, just being here and seeing everything what's going on. So that's pretty much a few things that I think are really important to mention here, you know, like people taking that courage to go out regardless of, you know, the consequences that could bring to them.
Okay, thank you very much, Karen. Thank you very much. I want to shift the conversation a little bit around one topic, because there is one question that Norma sent us, mostly springing from her own experience, and I want to read it to you so that you, whoever has an idea, because what she's doing, I think, is very interesting, that is gathering information to help young professionals do better and to get better trained and get paid properly for the job they have trained for. And I think this is a very powerful action, because it's not that, I mean, there are different ways to make a change. And she has a question that will make us all think around the same topics. How do we create opportunities for the development of new political leadership among Colombian youth? That's the beginning of the question. How do we create opportunities for the development of new political leadership among Colombian youth? Just by saying new political leadership, not heirs to political families, but like in the people who are now on the streets. Remember people who are now on the streets. How can we help them gain political agency themselves? So that's the first question. How do we create opportunities for the development of political leadership among the youth? See, this happens a lot in English class, and the students think that you feel bad that the teacher, oh my God, I have to speak because the teacher feels bad, and the teacher never feels bad. The teacher can stay there quiet for 5 minutes, and it's called drowning. We let the group drown until somebody decides to swim, right? And Paula just raised her hand. So thank you, Paula. We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Now.
Okay. Norma, thank you for raising the question. I think that's a very critical question, particularly for educators. Now, I have to clarify that I'm part of the organizing committee of this conversation, but I needed to jump in just because of the relevance of the question. As an educator, I think that I often feel defeated because of the circumstances where we act as educators. But I think we should never lose hope. Sometimes I feel that we educators have not played our role well. A role is that as educators requires courage to not only cover what we are as educators trained to cover in the classroom. We, particularly language teachers, are trained to focus on teaching the language structures, to develop, to help our students develop communicative competence. And I think that's not the only role that we should have as educators. As you said before, I think we should be able to provide our students, whatever our subject is, with the tools to read the world critically, not just to absorb all the information, especially now when we are bombarded with so many different kinds of information, some of the information that's not really true. And that requires a different kind of literacy development. It's not just about reading, as Freire said, not just reading the word, but the world, and reading it critically. And for that, I think that educators should be posing different kinds of questions. And just by starting with different kinds of questions in the classroom, I think that is the start to providing our students with the tools to read that world critically. It sounds simplistic, but I think that's a good way to start. And also when we have students like the ones that we have at our School of Languages, like Karen and Julian and Nicole, who have different initiatives as students. No, there is not one teacher just telling them what to do. This is when they develop different initiatives at our university or in the streets. It is their initiative, and I think now we should join them in that effort because this is an educational effort, all of us together.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you. Absolutely. From the point of view of teachers, we have to reevaluate what we know as teacher roles. Especially in language, we have always had teacher roles is a resource, is a guide, is a whatever. But now we need to be also curators of the material that we begin to class. We need to be fact checkers. And we need to have social criterion. And what you say, a new kind of social literacy is absolutely indispensable. So thank you very much. Let's go with Alejandro and then Lily.
Just a short comment to add to Paula's comment. We need to create safe places, safe spaces for the debate. I believe that we need to understand the schools and the universities as a place to be, how to say that, like to be smart, but no fear about it. You know, because
a laboratory.
A laboratory, yeah, exactly, something like that. And because, but I don't know, but I have this feeling. I don't know, Lily, you work in schools, but when I went to a school and feel like the people, the students are afraid to talk, to speak, to question, it's like, what is happening here? This is the place to be smart. No, This is the place. Where are those kind of place? We need to create a place where you could be easily, and you can feel I don't know, connected with and inspired to be smart, to share your questions. And I feel like we need to create this kind of places, safe places for the debate, for the political, environmental debate, really deep topics, but with a feel of safe. You know, like at the end of this debate, we could be friends and not, you know, be a part of the gang or, you know, a different part of that. So that's my point.
We talk about laboratory conditions. Laboratory conditions means that you can run an experiment and you're in safe conditions if the experiment goes wrong, right? And I have often thought of schools as laboratories of independence. That's where the child starts the transfer of authority from parents to teachers and to friends, and that's where they learn how to solve their own problems. That's where they learn to flirt. That's where they learn to get angry. And at the end of the day, the consequence is minimal because you're in lab conditions inside the school. And now with remote education, we have lost a lot of it. We've taken like 20 steps behind. So that's going to be another complete conversation. How are we going to create those spaces in remote education? But that's a completely different story. Lily, please go ahead.
The other day, I read a quote that said, it was like a question to a child, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the child answered, kind. I want to be kind. And I believe that if our educational system educated students to be kind, we would live in a different world. I do believe that we need to follow this national strike by an education reform in Colombia. we really need it. We have to stop thinking that 50 students in a classroom are going to have a voice. And children need to be listened to. One of the things I wrote down here in my notebook was communication, and that was something that Alejandro touched to. We need to listen to students. We need to give them a voice. We need to give them room to find their own voice. And political education doesn't start in university. It starts in primary school. It starts in kindergarten. It starts from the early ages. It starts at home when parents listen to their children's needs. So if we were to write an education reform, we will need to focus on developing 21st century skills, entrepreneurship, leadership, critical thinking, communication. We need to develop more social, emotional skills from the very curriculum at the schools. We need to give room for students to know how to react when they are angry, to how to be peacemakers, how to be change makers, even if they're 4 years old, if they're 12 years old, from the very beginning, because that's what you put in a child's heart, it's gonna be there forever. So if right now we stop thinking of education as a competition and rather as a way of building together the country that we dream, we're going to have a total different story in 20 years from now.
You are absolutely correct. And when you say that political education should start from home, it's a win-win situation. James Baldwin used to say that children have never been very good at listening to their elders, but they never failed to imitate them, right? And whoever has had children around the house knows this is true, that children start adopting mannerisms of the adults and start everything. But if they see that their parents behave with justice, that's what they're going to learn, right? That is what they're going to learn. So that's something very, 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 very. And I told you that the communication, this conversation was going to be organic. It was going to be changing. It was going to go in different ways. And here we are. Now we're discussing education in the framework and how we as educators or as subjects of education, because everybody at some point is a teacher or a student or has done either, are are called in this moment to participate actively. Julian, please go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to say something about this because the question that was posed before is really interesting now that we are youngsters, now that we are here in these spaces. And I deeply thank my teachers, my professors, because without them, this wouldn't be possible. Now, us, Nicole, Karen, and all the students that make part, for example, of our university and some others and some schools even, because there are many teenagers that are under 18 and they are now on the streets without fear and trying to fight for all those rights. But without them, it wouldn't be possible. It's really because of them that we have strengthened our judgment, our opinion. They have accompanied us. They have helped us a lot. But now it's time to start walking alone, if I can say so. So I really thank this help, but I don't want to offend anybody with this, but the elders, I want you to support our youngsters, support our teenagers, support all these voices that have been raised throughout and during these difficult times, because we have been part of several platforms, virtual and face-to-face platforms, in where we try to speak and to raise our voices and to say what we are thinking right now, and sometimes we don't find that support because some people consider that we are under 18, like this minoría de edad, those philosophers talk about. And we want to demonstrate that we are not some people who can be like controlled by some others, that we always have our own opinion and judgment, and that we want to build this change. We don't want to build the Colombia of the future. We want to build the Colombia of the present, and now we are the present. We are not some people who are bubbling and who are still starting to walk. No, we already have our experience and we have something to say. And that's what we want to say, because sometimes we don't feel, for example, represented in that dialogue roundtable, which is having those negotiations right now with the government. We want us as teenagers a space also to express what we think and to have the opportunity to decide. That's what we want us. We want you to think about it and to support us, please, because we cannot do this alone.
Absolutely, and you're right. So if just one piece of advice I can give you, you're not youngsters anymore. The word doesn't apply anymore. You already exited that age group a while ago, my friend, right? But teenagers and young people right now are much more intelligent than my generation when we were teenagers. You have worse music, but you are definitely more intelligent. But that's a completely different conversation. We're not going to get into that. Nicole, you were raising your hand.
I was just going to touch a little bit on that underage thing that he said, and also compliment a little bit on what Paul said about what the university can offer as a space to talk. I started college when I was 15. I graduated high school at 14 and started college when I was 15. And I started in translation, like I've never changed my program. Everyone thought that I wouldn't make it, that college would be like too much for someone that was 15. And honestly, it has been such a big platform that I'm so grateful for. In the University of Antioquia, mainly, honestly, I'm so proud of my college. If I only talked about it, I would go for like days. But being a little summarized, the platform that students created by their own, because teachers didn't create that. The assemblies, I'm talking about the assemblies. Teachers didn't create that. The own students needed to portray their voice. They needed to talk. They needed to let others know, let the teachers know, the administration know what they were thinking. And students created this horizontal way of living college, where teachers are not greater or higher than students. We cooperate and do things together. Same with people in the administration and everyone else in the college, in the university. It's it just gave us a platform. It gave us a way to talk. It gave us a way to express what we were feeling, what we were thinking, and to create with that. Because out of those assemblies, it's not only like talking your mind, it's also creating. We make the difference by talking in those spaces because we get to build stuff. That's where in a past strike that we had, that's where the people came so they could speak with the government and make arrangements and just deal with what was going on at the moment. So from our university, from a little Zoom call or us being in the theater when we could, everything just grew from there. It's like soil. It's like soil and a little plant that has just been growing and growing, and we just made a bunch of branches, and it's just this beautiful tree that everyone feels welcomed in because it's a safe space to talk and create. So I'm very grateful to my college, mainly to the School of Languages, because it has been a home. I think Karen and I can identify with this because we've been working with the representation of the students for a while now, and everyone has just been so kind and like they've opened their doors to hear the students, and that's something that doesn't happen very often. Usually in the administration or like the teachers, they don't really hear the students because they have their own way of doing things. That's mainly occurs in schools like high school, middle school. But in our School of Languages, they have just been so amazing to us, and I'm so grateful for that because our voices need to be heard. It's so important for them to be heard. So that's amazing. And also I really do agree that younger people are getting way more thoughtful.
Woke.
Like they're thinking, yeah, they're waking up earlier, you know. Now you don't need to be over the age of 18 or 21 to actually have a position, to actually be political, to actually participate in movements. You don't need to have an age to do that. You see everyone just doing their own thing and thinking on their own, and that is something that's amazing to me, honestly. So yeah, that was me.
I want to follow up what you're saying, Nicole. Thank you very much. I want to follow up on what you're saying by talking about this platform that university and that education at large provides, right? In relation to what's been going on over the last 3 weeks in Colombia. And before I forget, people who are watching us learning English, the expression is speak your mind. Okay, so not talk your mind, speak your mind. So based on that, remote education has had an impact on every part of education. For example, I can tell you that one of the big losses, a huge loss for teachers during this pandemic has been the teachers' lounge, or also known as teachers' room, where teachers get together to drink coffee and talk. That is a place where everything is discussed, from politics to pedagogy, but it's a place of very honest exchange. And it has felt a little bit like the virtual education, the remote education via computer sometimes has lost, like every meeting has a purpose. Every time that you meet is because you have a class or you have a meeting or something like that. Whereas at the university, walking around, you just ran into people and you had the opportunity to talk to them. Not everything was planned. On the internet, you don't run into people, right? You don't run into somebody by chance in a Zoom room, right? It's not easy. But at the same time, it allows for an enormous range of access to information, because as you are connected to the internet of your university, you are connected to the internet of the rest of the world. So we're seeing the demonstrations in the United States as they happen. We're seeing what is happening in Palestine as it happened. And we are seeing what is happening 3 blocks away from my house as it happened, because somebody is streaming it on TikTok or doing reels or is putting them somewhere. So, but do you think that this is a question that I want all of us to try and answer after I give Wilder the floor? Do you think, or what do you think has been the role of remote education in today's social movements of what's going on in Colombia? What has been the role of remote education? Whenever we had the opportunity of using the auditoriums of the university to have the assembly, well, we saw each other at the assembly. But now it's not that easy. So how has remote education have had an impact on what's going on nowadays and to student movement. So let's talk about that after Wilder participates. Wilder, go ahead.
Okay, well, Federico, I just wanted to advocate for my generation because I'm seeing that the conversation is moving towards the kind of feeling that we are experiencing right now about this generation. But I think this has started long ago when I was in the university. We have this type of protests and we have this type of energy too, and we have this all this motivation, but there was never a moment like this one. There was never like a rupture where we could think and reflect upon it long enough, I guess. And I think the pandemic gave people, especially young people, the opportunity to reflect on the reality of the country, on their own reality, and all the things that keeps us a little bit, I guess, subjugated sometimes to other people's ideas, other people's vision of the country and the educational system. But I think as a teacher, this question has been had existed since the times of Pablo Escobar and the painful 80s and 90s in our city. Led the conversation to a very dark place because there people were not trying to protest or to claim their rights, but they were trying to survive. Basically, the young people were trying to survive the city. So Medellin, I think, has been a perfect example of how education, as Alejandro was saying, when it is articulated, when it is connected and well organized, is a powerful force that can definitely transform societies. So I think that in our generation, in my generation, we also tried, but I think this generation did not only find a perfect momentum for doing that and gain momentum doing that, but also they found, I think, in this moment of crisis, as all crises in human history, a perfect moment to move forward and to do something differently.
Thank you, Wilder. Thank you very much. As Nicole was saying, it's like soil, and at this moment the soil was fertile and it sprouted. I want to ask something, Mijer. Are you gonna answer? Is what you have to say has to do with what Wilder was just saying?
Is to answer the question and make a small comment about
then go for it. Then go for it, and then Nicole.
Intervention. Thank you, Federico. Yeah, I was thinking something that Wilder said, and we need to think that that Colombia has always made demonstrations, has a long history in doing demonstrations. And a question that came to my mind is, what is different now? And what is different now is not only the pandemic, it's also that new subjects has used the demonstrations to trying to be recognized as political subjects. And these new subjects are the young people from the peripheries of the different cities, especially in the urban cities. So yeah, I just want to add that comment to the intervention of Wilder. And trying to answer the question of Federico, I was thinking that these days, all the universities I know have made forums trying to understand what's going on. And for example, I am a graduate of the Universidad del Valle, and I was watching my teachers of this university trying to analyze the situation in Cali. And after that, today I was watching a broader event that gathered together universities from Chicago, from US universities, private universities in Colombia, ICESI, Universidad de los Andes, like a bunch of universities, and trying to analyze with NGOs and political institutions, all these actors trying to explain what has happened in these 3 weeks. And this, in another moment, I believe, wouldn't happen, because it's like the Zoom era, you know. It's like the time when all the pandemic gave us the tool to gather people from different cities, different countries, and trying to understand what's happening right now. So yeah, like that's like a great gain that the Zoom era gave us, and the remote education gave us to the current situation. And thinking not only about the forums, but also the role of social media, and thinking that most of the people don't believe in the hegemonic media. So what has happened with the demonstrators is that they have been posting all the situations that they are seeing, or they are streaming in Facebook Live or Instagram Live and all the platforms. But at the same time, this has attention with other actors, which these actors are trying to contest trying to respond the actions of the demonstrators. And at the same time, last week I was watching a pronouncement of two congressmen that were saying, hey, this live video is not happening right now. So what is the role of each citizen to triangulate the information that we are seeing in all the digital media? So yeah, there are a lot of tensions that we need as a political subject, as a citizen, trying to understand first, but at the same time trying to triangulate and have different sources to understand what is going on.
Thank you so much. Definitely, Zoom has had its advantages, right? Remote education does have its advantages, obviously. And like I said, it's been a stream of information from everywhere, but it's also a stream of misinformation, right? Too much information is no content. It's just information. It's just data out there. Nicole, go ahead, please.
Oh, almost never muted. Okay, so what I wanted to talk about is the platform that this is, like the technology, the tools that the technology gave us to implement what I was saying before, those assemblies, those spaces to talk. So before, in the theater, we would get up to the theater has, you can fit up to 1,200 people there, right? But it was always more than that, or at least most of the time it was more than that. I remember very clearly. But now with these spaces, we get to have up to 5,000 people in the same meeting, and they all get to talk. And that is incredible. I know that it's not that big of a percentage if we're talking about the whole university, but still 5,000 students saying whatever they need to say, that is a huge platform for education, or not even saying, just hearing, listening to the conversation, listening to what's going on. We always have this little part in the assembly where everyone talks about the facts, what's going on right now at the moment. Everyone talks numbers, statistics, experiences, and stuff like that. Just hearing about that in a platform that isn't media, because media can sometimes be a little bit tricky with the current situation. But if we learn about that amongst us, we tell each other what's going on with the perspectives that we have, that is a learning process as well. So these technologies have given us those tools to actually learn more, to grow more, to participate more. We've had, I think that one, the 5,000 one, was the biggest assembly that we've ever had in the time that I've been in the college, of course. So yeah, it's nice. It's nice to see that the whole community is gathering up in these tools, because obviously it's a little easier for everyone, and that it gives us the space to learn and grow.
Thank you. Something that Miguel was saying about social networks, and it's not only about the platform that we use for class, but it's also what people do with their Instagram and what they do with their Twitter and stuff like that. And what we have seen, what has been presented, is something very funny, that many of the people who call themselves influencers are now very quiet because they have nothing to say, or they don't want to affect their image talking about this type of topic. And so they are influencers who are not influencing at the time when their influence would be crucial, right? They're pulling back at the worst moment. And other people have come up through the social networks, stopping what they normally post about to just disseminate information, to talk about where people can donate stuff, to talk about careful with this is a dangerous area. It's 6 p.m. There are no guarantees for protests after 6. Go home, right? All these things are also happening. So it's an interesting thing that it's not only one way, just the education entity and the students receiving, but it's the education interacting with the community, the student interacting with the rest of the community. I think we're doing now more community outreach than ever for different types of communication. And so that's why I wanted to ask you all, what do you think, or how do you perceive from your point of view, the factor of remote education or just social media in general in what's going on right now in Colombia, and probably the projection to outside the world or interconnection? Who wants to go? See, again, drowning. I'm fine with that.
I'd like to say something.
All right, let's go with
That's
Norma, Alejandro, and then Nicole. So Norma, go for it.
Thank you. So, I mean, I can only speak from the perspective of someone who's in the United States, but I will say that social media has done a great service to getting the word out about what's happening, because unfortunately the United States is still very biased sort of against Latin America, any news from Latin America, Africa. It's just kind of not considered, the main headline in general. So if it weren't for social media, there would be a lot of things that I myself wouldn't know. I have to search for news around this. I think maybe I saw one story on what's happening in Colombia one time on the news. Everything else I've gotten through, Facebook videos that are sent from friends and family in Colombia. And so I think from the perspective of the bias that still continues to exist around what news is considered relevant to the rest of the world, social media has been a gift for us.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, absolutely. Even though, and probably for people who are watching us on the internet, there is a new term or something that is called shadow banning. And shadow banning is shooting down hashtags or shooting down specific content or images so that it creates the constant appearance of nothing is happening because nothing is being reported, right? And being alert towards to the shadow banning, it's a very key thing for modern literacy, what Paula was saying. And also in this modern literacy is to figure out the immense job that the K-pop fans are doing with communication. The whole saga of the K-popers in Colombia during this last month is absolutely fantastic. So whoever wants to write a nice essay in English for their next English class, there's an interesting topic. So let's go with Alejandro and then Nicole.
Oh, I understand you like K-pop.
Right.
Yeah, great.
That's what the shirt is. That's
Amazing.
what the shirt is all about.
Wonderful.
Right. So BTS all the way.
Yeah. I don't know. As always, technology is a tool, and digital platforms and networks are tools. For me, the question is, what kind of human being are in those kind of networks? Lily say soft skills. We could say critical skills. I feel like that's not soft. That's our criticals right now. And one of the most important, in my opinion, is critical thinking. So when you use your networks, when you use your platforms, you need to be critical and to balance, to put together different point of view. Try to create your own point of view. Your opinion is really important. It's the way that you see the world. It's not something that it's just my opinion. No, it's the way that you see the world and you treat the people. So is really important. So I believe like the question, about the technology is important. Obviously, we need to understand better and be smarter user of the technology. But my question is about the human being with this kind of technologies. That's my answer. And I'm sorry, I need to go. I need to pick up my child. So I'm sorry, YouTube. I'm sorry, people. Thank you for everything. I'm so happy to feel this. I feel hope in this moment with you all. And I hope, I was talking with Paula and Federico, to create a network with you guys. If you want, we are here to see, you know, what happened next and new opportunities. We'll see. Okay.
And the people who are in the chat, I don't know if you guys have been checking the chat on the YouTube thing, but it's active.
Yeah.
The thing is happening.
Yeah, really active.
The thing is happening.
Yeah.
Yes, the thing is absolutely happening out there. So it's fantastic. Well, there's always going to be the human factor, right? Liable to error. We're always going to be liable to error. There is that. But what is the intention using behind using certain technology? Let's go. Nicole withdrew her. She was not going to speak anymore, right? And then we're going to go with Wilder and then Julian. Go.
Well, I think that Alejandro has a very interesting point, because what we have seen is that the use of technology has allowed not only communication and like Norma was saying, allow to get the message across, but I think the people have become more creative in the way that they use it. And as a teacher, I think that's a very interesting, let's say, like new environment to look into, because it's how can we use this in the future as teachers, now that we know that our young generation are interested in this type of in the use of technology for these purposes. How can we actually take this into the classroom and bring this to the classroom and foster critical thinking using it? Because it's using like what we are living. It's not only like, okay, this is the past and it's behind. It's also how can we include this conversation in the future. So for me, it's a very interesting, like now that I am in a position where I can actually help teachers do things differently. I think I want to hear more about that from the young generations, what their ideas are and how they can enrich the way we teach them to. Federico, unfortunately, I also need to go now, but it was a pleasure to be here.
Everybody's jumping ship. All right, take it easy, Wilder. Have a good one, right? But before I move on to Julian, and now that we got to the idea of being critical, it is very important to remember that there is a lot of research on what is called learner identity. Not only who is Nicole as a person, not only who Karen is as a person, but who they are as learners. And the discussion has moved on to critical learner identity and critical identity texts and digital identity text, how people compose the body of work of all the type of references, the memes, the social networks that they use, the kind of posts that they use, the hashtags that they use. All of this has to create the digital learner identity. It becomes like a badge, a way to recognize a person, a way to associate. And there are two authors that are writing about this, and I would like invite everybody who's interested in this to read from them. They are Bonnie Norton and Ron Darvin, right? Bonnie Norton and Ron Darvin have been doing extensive research in the space of critical learner identity, in which a critical learner is a responsible consumer and producer of information, right? Not only just consume information, but what type of information you're consuming. And I'm just gonna say something. I'm gonna say something very careful. So critical learners are now defined as responsible consumers and producers of information. That's it. Julian, please go ahead. And then Paula.
Yes, moving to these virtual means and virtual platforms was not an option for us. It was a need, because we couldn't have these face-to-face classes, for example, not anymore in our universities. So even though we recognize that it was just like a big or several challenges, when referring to this type of education, it was also many possibilities. And I have to say that, for example, sometimes these face-to-face classes, it reduced our horizon, our reality, to just a specific type of reality. And now, thanks to these virtual means and virtual platforms, we have the opportunity to access to all different realities, not only in our territory, for example, in our city, Medellín, but also what is happening in other parts. And for example, talking about this sometimes we have some spaces, just like Nicole mentioned, some forums and some other types of gatherings where we can just like talk about what is happening and also build together all together. And for example, me as a student, sometimes I just felt so there was no hope. We were just like the ones who were like struggling and trying to find like a cure for this venom. But thanks to virtuality, I realized that we are not the one and only are the only ones who are trying to solve all this stuff. That there are some other people in some other places that are doing the same. As a bilingual mediator in the Museum Casa de la Memoria, I had the opportunity to interact with some other students and teachers all around our country, from Cali, Bogota, Bucaramanga, even Cartagena, and some other places. And I realized that they were also trying to implement some projects, thinking about how to change all this, how to still betting on peace, on reconciliation, and not in war, for example. So these allowed us to have this hope still in our hearts and in our minds, and without trying to giving up because of the circumstances that sometimes are really tough, but that there is something that we can do, and that these connections, not only with people in our own cities or in our own towns, but with some other people all around our country and even outside, because we have seen also some demonstrations in France, in England, in the United States, and in some other countries, and some people that are trying to get informed about what is happening and trying to help, even because I have received so many ways of support from some people who are abroad. So this is what we need to do right now, trying to establish these connections, trying to work all together in order to see what we can do to solve all this. And this was allowed because of virtuality. And this was a really, really big deal.
Thank you very much, Julian. Paula.
I just wanted to go in the lines of what you proposed earlier, Federico, when we see the possibilities that technology has offered us to produce content, and that now we see that not only our young people, also our children, are not just passive consumers of media and information, but very active producers of information. I think what I've seen very often in the media, in social media, it gives me hope, because our children and our youth are really creative, and I think more creative than their parents and their teachers. And I think that's that's a source of learning for us. And in here, I want to go back to what I was referring to earlier in relation to the role of educators and caretakers. And that's that, I think, I know many people would disagree with me in that violence is a way to get your message across. I don't think violence is ever the answer. I think there are multiple forms of resistance. And I think those multiple forms of resistance are present in the content that our youth are producing. And I think the role of us educators is to help, like in a process of where we educators position as learners as well. We join our students in producing counter narratives, because that's what we see. That's what we see in the media very often. That we see counter narratives, and I think that's a form of resistance. So I think through dialogue with our students, in as opposed to just demotivating or not addressing these issues like our daily lives, like our current situation in the classroom, really empowers our students, our youth, our children to really prepare for life. You know, the current situation cannot go on one direction, and then what we see in schools or in universities as something that happens outside of that life, of that current life. So I believe that we not only should address our daily lives, our current situation in classrooms, but also we should engage in creative forms of resistance.
Thank you so much. And yes, it's it's that common place that you see in many places on the social networks, todas las formas de lucha, right? That's where it goes to at the end. But I agree with you. There has to be more creativity poured into this. Nicole.
I'm sorry, guys. I just really quickly had to say that I really have to go right now. But I thank you all so much for the space, for the opportunity. And I really hope that this gets done again and so I can participate again. Because
Excellent, Nicole. It was great to have you, and it's great to meet you. Please keep up your excellent work. And and this is bringing us to a boil. This is bringing us to a closure for everybody. And so before our final address, does anybody have something to say that they want to close with?
I would like to thank you all, Lily and Jamie, who already left, Norma, Miller, and of course, our students from the School of Languages. I really thank you, and I would like to thank the people who have been following us on YouTube, because this is a conversation that gives me hope. I think that's the word, that's the word that should join us these days, hope. And I feel hope. I feel hopeful. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Paula. Thank you so much. And I know that your students absolutely love you. Miller, you were going to say something? No? Sorry? I thought that you were going to. Oh, okay, guys, remember that this is going back to why we're doing this, because there are conversation clubs, but conversation has to be real and pertinent. Right. And so we have taken this opportunity to do this. And I think it has been a successful, not an exercise, exactly because of what Nicole and Karen and Julian are saying. We are not babbling. We are not children. This is not a drill for something that is going to happen in the future. No, this is the conversation. Right. And what has to happen now is that you can go out there, all of you, all of us, go out there and say, this conversation is happening. We are using platforms of education in order to have this across borders. Norma is in Boston, and we can't thank you enough for making the time to be here with us. Miguel also, thanks a lot. And remember that this is what we want to do. This is one of the proposals of Código Medellín as the consulting board for bilingualism and plurilingualism of the mayor's office in Medellín. And I want to thank you all for your participation. You have been wonderful. You have participated, you have been encouraging. This has been very stimulating, and I'm sure that the people who have been reading that, because I'm following the chat here on another screen, really got something out of it. So if you think that this can help pass the word around, take the link and send it to your people, post it on your social networks, share it, and take a look at the other excellent material that is on the rest of the channel of the Universidad de Antioquia. Again, I am personally grateful that we had this conversation. We are going to continue hosting spaces, and hopefully we can all meet again and probably talk of different things, more joyous or more serious. But thank you everyone for watching, and so have a very good night. Thank you all.
Thank you all for inviting us, for creating this.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.